It would be a bit political suicide, would it not be, to increase fuel duty, would it not?
I think it would, because the anti-fuel duty lobby is pretty vociferous. You're talking about taking on white van man here. Also, Eamon, if you increase fuel duty, that goes directly into headline inflation.
It does.
Inflation is very much driven by fuel prices.
Supply chain, the whole business, anything we order.
So I think the Chancellor does that at his peril, which is why I don't think he will do it.
Yeah, so what is he going to do? And what's got you tingling? Is there anything... Because everybody says this is going to be the biggest bore since goodness knows when.
Well, we're trying to make it as interesting as we can. Budgets are still really important to how the nation's run, to people's finances.
This is how the city's run, isn't it? He wants to really show the city, I've got a grasp on things. We're not going to spend money recklessly. You can trust us.
He is going to make a virtue of his image of Jeremy from Accounts, plain vanilla, beige, a bit like the Oscars' new carpet, because the last major statement we had was the Kwasi Kwarteng Liz Truss mini-budget back in September, which, of course, coincided with turmoil on financial markets. There has been a bit of turmoil on financial markets in recent days, of course, because of the collapse of that Silicon Valley Bank in America. It seems to have calmed down a bit over the last 24 hours. And what we're hearing in the early leaks, if you like, overnight, are things that are supposed to appeal to, quotes, hard-working families, the alarm clock classes, young parents trying to make ends meet. And so he's gone heavily on childcare, not something you'd usually associate with Conservative governments, to be fair, but already there is free, in inverted commas, I'll explain why it's in inverted commas, childcare, 30 hours a week for parents with kids that are 3 and 4. That's going to be extended to 1 and 2-year-olds. But it isn't really free for 30 hours, because what it amounts to is an amount of money the government will subsidise your childcare costs. It's 646 quid a month. Now, as any hard-working young parents will tell you, that doesn't buy you 30 hours of childcare these days. That cap of 646 quid was set years ago, way out of date. So maybe that cap will rise as well. But it doesn't stop the headline writers still writing 30 hours.
But we had the ONS figures yesterday about the sort of people out of work still post-pandemic, and it seems as though the budget today very much trying to tackle that problem. We'll have relaxation of migrant worker rules. We'll also be hearing about long-term sick being incentivised back into work by being able to still claim universal credit whilst back in work.
There's going to be a whole package of back-to-work, going-for-growth measures. It's not the freezing of corporation tax or other tax cuts that a lot of Conservative backbenchers want. And there will be some revolt during the aftermath of this budget statement when Jeremy Hunt goes ahead and does increase corporation tax from 19 to 25%. Of course, lots of small companies pay corporation tax too. It's 6% off their margins. That's going to be a blow for lots of them.
Why do they need that extra so desperately, if it is a risk?
I actually think if you raise corporation tax, just before I come back to Isabel's point, if you raise corporation tax now, at a time when we're trying to get the economy moving, we've just dodged recession, I actually think that will cost the Treasury money. I don't think it will raise money for the Treasury, and lots of academics and other observers agree with me. But to go back to Isabel's point, they're trying to go for growth not with tax cuts, but by incentivising people to work. We know there's over 1 million vacancies still, 1.1 million. It's down from the record high of 1.3, but there's still lots and lots of vacancies. And there's lots of people in their 50s who, frankly, haven't gone back to work after the pandemic. Now they're reassessing their lifestyles. The cost of living squeeze is hitting them too. And also we know there's lots of people at the upper end of the labour market who are, in their view, stymied by these limits on lifetime pension contributions. You get heavily taxed if you keep working and paying into your pension. We know a lot of NHS doctors are retiring for that reason. So for all these, under all these headings, the government's trying to get people back to work. And these new tests on benefit viability, whether or not you are entitled to benefits, they will be extremely controversial.
Yeah, and the great skill you have is turning what Jeremy Hunt will be spinning out today into something understandable. And his defence of this raise of corporation tax, he's been talking about these super deductions and these capital allowances. Can you explain to Joe Bloggs and indeed Eamon and me how that balances the books in the Treasury if he's increasing corporation tax? How does that feed into all of this?
The Treasury would argue, and the Office for Budget Responsibility will argue, they're going to be a lot less gloomy than they were a few months ago, by the way, when they bring out their forecast today. The Treasury and the OBR would argue that if you raise the rate of corporation tax from 19 to 25%, the first increase in 50 years, then you'll get more revenue in. I don't think that's right. As a professional economist myself, I think the disincentive that will have on investment and growth will lead to less corporation tax. But hey, what do I know? But history bears me out. In terms of the deductions, the way it works at the moment is if you invest as a business, you can offset that investment against your tax. In some cases, you can offset it 100% or even more, so you actually get tax back. If those incentives are removed, then businesses won't want to invest. They won't want to build another factory, employ more people. But a lot of people would say, including me, but if the headline rate of corporation tax goes up, small businesses pay that, many of them, but they don't have vast reserves of cash to invest to take advantage of the tax incentive. So I think this is detrimental for the small and medium-sized enterprises, which employ over half our people and account for most of our growth.
Well, listen, you've been accounting for the whole economic side of that, and thank you very much, and you'll do that throughout the programme this morning. Appreciate that. The social side of it absolutely fascinates me. This whole idea, right, OK, this may reflect you watching or listening. And, you know, so why have you retired? Why have you stepped out of the workplace at 50? Because you're loaded? Because you're infirmed? Because you've got other obligations, you've got to look after a parent, or you've got to look after grandchildren or something like that. But it absolutely fascinates me.
Well, how about people, if they have any specific questions for Liam, send them in and we'll put them to him, because he can be our very own professional economist to answer your budget questions, because, you know, we've got a few of our own, haven't we?
I was just, when you were explaining what you get back for corporation tax and whatever, I'm thinking, this is what Isabel and I should have learned at school.
I know.
Well, Jeremy Hunt says it's going to be a budget for wonks. Careful how I pronounce that. Policy, pointy-headed people. There will be lots and lots of detail. And in some senses, I think he's going to try and blind us all with the detail, because the basic position is that taxes are going to stay high. They're heading for a 70-year high, and lots of his own party and quite a lot of voters won't like that.